The scorching Arizona sun beat down on Emma Turner as she trudged along the dusty road, her swollen feet aching with each step. Her 6-month-old daughter Lily wailed in her arms, the infant's face flushed red with heat and discomfort. The year was 1876, and Emma had been walking since dawn, fleeing a life that had become unbearable after her husband's death left her at the mercy of his cruel family. "Hush now, my love," Emma whispered, bouncing the baby gently. But Lily only cried harder, her tiny fists balling up in frustration. Emma's throat was parched, her canteen empty since midday. The nearest town was still miles away, and her strength was failing. When her legs finally gave out, Emma collapsed at the roadside beneath the sparse shade of a scraggly mesquite tree. Tears mingled with dust on her cheeks as she held her crying baby close. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "I'm so sorry, Lily." The rumble of approaching hooves barely registered through her exhaustion until a shadow fell across them both. Emma looked up, squinting against the sun's glare to see a tall figure on horseback. "Madam," the man's voice was deep, tinged with concern. He dismounted in one fluid motion, his spurs jangling as his boots hit the dirt. "You and your little one all right?" Emma couldn't find her voice. Her baby cried louder. The stranger crouched before her, and she could see him clearly now, a young man, perhaps 28 or 29, with sun-bronzed skin and kind eyes the color of a summer storm. He wore dusty trail clothes and a weathered Stetson that had seen better days. "Name's Zachary Fletcher," he said, his gaze moving from Emma to the crying infant. "You two shouldn't be out here alone." "We have nowhere else to go," Emma managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Zachary's expression softened as he looked at the crying child. Without hesitation, he reached into his saddlebag and produced a canteen. "Here," he offered. "Drink first, then we can talk." As Emma took grateful sips, Lily continued to wail. The cowboy's eyes crinkled with compassion. "Her baby cried alone by the road," he said softly, almost to himself. Then, with a gentle certainty that surprised her, he added, "Then I'll be the one to hold you both." Before Emma could protest, Zachary had removed his gloves and was offering his arms. "May I?" he asked. Something in his steady gaze made Emma nod. She carefully handed Lily to him, watching as his large, calloused hands cradled her daughter with unexpected tenderness. "Hey there, little lady," Zachary murmured, and to Emma's astonishment, Lily's cries began to soften. He rocked the baby gently, humming a tune Emma didn't recognize. Within moments, Lily's wails had subsided to hiccuping whimpers. "How did you do that?" Emma asked, amazed. Zachary smiled. "Had 6 younger siblings. Guess I've got the touch." He looked up at the punishing sun, then back to Emma. "My ranch is about 3 miles east of here." "Not much, but there's shelter, food, and clean water. You're welcome to rest there until you figure out your next steps." Emma hesitated, years of hard lessons making her wary of a stranger's kindness. Reading her expression, Zachary added, "No strings attached, madam. Just one Christian soul helping another. You can leave any time you choose." The baby had settled against his chest, her tiny hand clutching his shirt. Emma knew she had no better options. "Thank you," she said finally. "I'm Emma Turner, and this is Lily." Zachary nodded, a smile warming his weather-lined face. "Miss Emma, Miss Lily, pleased to make your acquaintance." He stood carefully with the baby still in his arms. "Let's get you both out of this heat." He helped Emma onto his horse, handed Lily back to her, then took the reins and began leading them eastward on foot. With each step, Emma wondered if she was making a terrible mistake or taking the first step toward salvation. The Fletcher ranch came into view as the sun dipped toward the horizon. It wasn't grand, just a modest cabin with a barn and corral beside it, but to Emma's exhausted eyes, it looked like paradise. "It's not much," Zachary said apologetically, "but it's home." "It's beautiful," Emma responded honestly. Inside the cabin was simple but clean. A main room served as both kitchen and living space, with a cast iron stove, a rough-hewn table with 4 chairs, and a comfortable-looking armchair near the fireplace. 2 doors led off the main room, which Emma assumed were bedrooms. "You can take my room," Zachary said, gesturing to one of the doors. "I'll bunk in the spare room. Used to be my brother's before he moved to California." "I couldn't possibly. I insist," he cut her off gently. "You need proper rest more than I do." Too weary to argue, Emma accepted his generosity. The bedroom was sparsely furnished but immaculate. The bed was covered with a handmade quilt that looked well-loved but clean. Zachary left her to settle in while he prepared a simple meal of beans, bacon, and cornbread. The food smelled so good that Emma's stomach growled loudly enough for Zachary to hear it from across the room. "Been a while since you ate properly, hasn't it?" he asked without judgment. Emma nodded, suddenly embarrassed. 3 days. I had some jerky, but I finished it yesterday." Something flashed in Zachary's eyes, anger perhaps, but not directed at her. "No one should go hungry in this country," he said firmly. "Not when there's plenty to share." As they ate, Lily slept peacefully in a makeshift cradle Zachary had quickly assembled from a wooden crate and some blankets. Emma found herself telling him her story how she'd married Thomas Turner at 18, thinking she'd found security and happiness. How he'd died of typhoid just 2 months after Lily was born. How his family had made it clear that, without Thomas, she and the baby were unwelcome burdens. "They gave me $50 and told me to find my way," Emma said, staring into her coffee cup. "Said I was never good enough for their son anyway." "And your family?" Zachary asked quietly. "Gone. Pa died in the war, Ma from consumption 2 years later." "I was 16 when the last of them passed." Zachary's hand tightened on his fork. "That's a heavy load for young shoulders." "No heavier than most women carry," Emma replied, though his sympathy touched her. After dinner, Zachary insisted Emma rest while he cleaned up. She was too exhausted to protest, falling asleep almost as soon as her head touched the pillow. She woke once in the night to Lily's hungry cries. After feeding her daughter, Emma crept to the bedroom door, intending to check if she had disturbed Zachary. Through the crack in the door, she saw him sitting in the armchair by the fire, reading a worn Bible by lamplight. The sight of this strong man, who had spent his day rescuing strangers, quietly reading scripture in the night hours, made something stir in Emma's heart that she quickly suppressed. Morning arrived with the smell of coffee and the sound of Zachary moving quietly around the kitchen. Emma emerged from the bedroom with Lily in her arms, both refreshed from the first good night's sleep they'd had in weeks. "Good morning," Zachary greeted them, tipping an imaginary hat. "Hope you slept well." "Better than I have in months," Emma admitted. Over breakfast, Zachary explained his situation. He had inherited the small ranch from his parents who had died within months of each other 2 years prior. His siblings had all moved on, some married, others seeking fortune elsewhere, leaving him to tend the modest herd of cattle and small plot of land alone. "It's not much, but it's honest work," he said. "I get by." "It seems like more than getting by to me," Emma observed, looking around the comfortable, if simple, home. Zachary smiled. "I suppose it is. I'm blessed, all things considered." After breakfast, Emma insisted on helping with chores. Despite Zachary's protests that she should rest, she was determined not to be a burden. "At least let me earn my keep," she said firmly. Zachary relented, and together they fell into an easy rhythm of work. Emma took charge of the household tasks, cooking, cleaning, mending, while Zachary tended to the livestock and fields. He had built a comfortable sling that allowed Emma to carry Lily while working, and the baby seemed content to watch the world from this perch. Days stretched into a week, then 2. Each evening, they would sit on the porch after dinner, watching the sunset paint the desert in gold and crimson. They talked of small things at first: the weather, the animals, local gossip, but gradually their conversations deepened. Emma learned that Zachary had fought briefly in the final months of the war, too young to see much action, but old enough to witness its horrors. He spoke of his dreams for the ranch, of expanding the herd and perhaps building a larger home someday. Emma shared stories of her childhood in Ohio, of the books she loved to read, and her secret hope that Lily might someday get the education she herself had been denied. Each night, Emma told herself she would leave soon. Each morning, she found another reason to stay just one more day. On the 15th day, as Emma hung laundry while Lily napped inside, Zachary approached from the corral. He had been breaking a young horse and dust covered his clothes. "Emma," he said, removing his hat, "I've been thinking." Something in his tone made her pause, clothespin in hand. "Yes." "Winter will be here before we know it. Roads get bad. Travel gets dangerous." Emma nodded, unsure where this was leading. "What I mean to say is..." Zachary cleared his throat. "You and Lily are welcome to stay through the winter, if you want to, that is." Emma felt her cheeks flush. "We've imposed on your kindness long enough." "It's no imposition," Zachary said quickly. "Truth is, the place feels more like a home with you both here." He looked away, suddenly interested in the brim of his hat. "But I understand if you want to move on." Emma studied him, this good, quiet man who had asked for nothing in return for his generosity. The thought of facing the world alone again filled her with dread, but staying meant something else, something she wasn't sure she was ready for. "I'll think on it," she promised. That night, after Zachary had gone to bed, Emma sat by the fire cradling Lily. Her daughter gazed up at her with wide, trusting eyes. "What should we do, little one?" Emma whispered. "Is this our home now? Is he meant to be part of our lives?" Lily cooed and grabbed Emma's finger in her tiny fist. The next morning, Emma rose early and prepared a special breakfast of flapjacks and fresh preserves. When Zachary entered the kitchen, his hair still damp from washing at the pump outside, she had the table set, and Lily contentedly playing on a blanket nearby. "We'll stay," Emma said without preamble. "Through the winter, at least, if you're certain we're not a burden." The smile that lit Zachary's face was answer enough. As autumn painted the landscape in russet and gold, they settled into a partnership that felt natural and right. Zachary taught Emma to ride, laughing with delight at her initial nervousness and then pride as she mastered the skill. Emma discovered that Zachary had a sweet tooth and began experimenting with desserts that made his eyes light up like a boy's. Lily thrived under their care, growing plumper and more active each day. She began to crawl, exploring the cabin with determined focus, while Emma and Zachary took turns ensuring she stayed out of mischief. The first time Lily pulled herself up on Zachary's leg and gazed up at him adoringly, Emma saw tears in his eyes that he quickly blinked away. That evening, as the first snow dusted the distant mountains, Zachary cleared his throat during dinner. "There's a harvest dance in town next Saturday," he said, studying his plate with unusual intensity. "Thought maybe we could go if you'd like, the three of us." Emma's heart fluttered strangely. "I don't have anything suitable to wear to a dance." "Mrs. Holbrook at the general store has some ready-made dresses. I could take you into town tomorrow." He finally looked up. "Only if you want to go, of course." The hope in his eyes made her decision easy. "I'd like that very much." The next day, they rode into the small town of Redemption, with Lily securely nestled in the sling across Emma's chest. The general store was the largest building on the main street, which wasn't saying much for a town that consisted of little more than a church, saloon, sheriff's office, and a handful of other establishments. Mrs. Holbrook was a plump, cheerful woman who clapped her hands in delight when Zachary explained their errand. "A dress for the harvest dance. How wonderful!" she beamed at Emma. "And who might this lovely young woman be, Zachary Fletcher? You've been keeping secrets." Emma felt her cheeks burn as Zachary stammered an explanation about finding her on the road. "She and Lily have been a blessing to the ranch," he finished, the tips of his ears reddening. Mrs. Holbrook's knowing smile made Emma blush harder. "Well, let's find you something that will make our Zachary's eyes pop right out of his head, shall we?" After much deliberation, Emma selected a dress of deep green calico with white lace trim. It wasn't fancy by city standards, but it was the prettiest thing she'd owned in years. It brings out the gold in your eyes, dear, Mrs. Holbrook said approvingly. While Emma was trying on the dress, she overheard Mrs. Holbrook speaking quietly to Zachary by the counter. "You've found yourself a good woman there," the shopkeeper said. "About time you had some happiness in that house again." "It's not like that," Zachary protested, though his tone lacked conviction. "No, well, perhaps it should be. Life's too short to deny yourself joy when it falls in your lap." When Emma emerged from the dressing room in her old clothes, both Zachary and Mrs. Holbrook were suspiciously interested in examining the candy jars on the counter. The day of the dance arrived clear and crisp. Emma spent extra time on her appearance, arranging her honey-brown hair in a style she hadn't attempted since before Lily was born. The green dress fit perfectly, accentuating her slender waist that had finally returned to its pre-pregnancy shape. When she emerged from the bedroom with Lily in her arms, dressed in a new white gown Zachary had surprised them with, the look on his face made every moment of preparation worthwhile. "You both look beautiful," he said simply, his voice rough with emotion. The town hall had been transformed for the harvest celebration. Pumpkins and autumn leaves decorated every surface, and lanterns cast a warm glow over the proceedings. A small band played lively tunes as couples twirled across the wooden floor. Emma felt eyes on them as they entered. Whispers followed their progress, but Zachary's protective presence beside her gave her courage. "Folks are just curious," he murmured. "Small towns run on gossip." The first person to approach them was the local preacher, a kind-faced man who introduced himself as Reverend Hayes. "Zachary, good to see you," he said warmly before turning to Emma. "And who might this lovely lady be?" "This is Emma Turner and her daughter Lily," Zachary replied. "They're staying at my ranch for a while. If the Reverend found this arrangement questionable, he didn't show it." "Welcome to Redemption, Mrs. Turner. We're always delighted to have new faces in our congregation." "Thank you, Reverend," Emma said. "We'll be there on Sunday." After that initial introduction, other townsfolk came forward. Some were openly curious, others genuinely welcoming. Zachary stayed close to Emma's side, his hand occasionally resting lightly on the small of her back, a gesture that sent warmth spreading through her. When the band struck up a waltz, Zachary turned to her. "Would you care to dance, Miss Emma?" "But Lily—" "I'd be happy to hold the little one," offered an elderly woman who had introduced herself as Widow Jenkins. "Been a grandmother 5 times over. Know my way around babies." Trusting the kind woman's experienced hands, Emma allowed Zachary to lead her onto the dance floor. His right hand settled respectfully at her waist, his left holding her hand with gentle strength. "I should warn you," Emma said as they began to move. "I haven't danced in years." "Just follow my lead," Zachary replied. "I won't let you fall," and she didn't. They moved together, as if they'd danced 100 times before, turning gracefully among the other couples. Emma was acutely aware of Zachary's nearness, of the clean scent of soap and leather that clung to him, of the careful way he guided her through the steps. "Everyone's staring," she whispered, noticing the curious glances. "Let them," Zachary said, his eyes never leaving hers. "They're just jealous I'm dancing with the prettiest woman in the room." The compliment, delivered with such unaffected sincerity, made Emma's heart skip. For the first time since Thomas's death, she allowed herself to feel something beyond grief and worry, a flicker of possibility, of hope. As the evening progressed, Emma danced with Zachary several more times, but also with other men from the community, the blacksmith, the mayor, even young Mr. Patterson, who ran the telegraph office. Zachary danced with other women too, though Emma noticed his eyes often sought her out across the room. Toward the end of the night, as the band played a slower melody, Zachary found her again. "One more dance?" he asked. Emma nodded, stepping into his arms with growing confidence. They moved together in comfortable silence for a moment before Zachary spoke. "Thank you for coming tonight," he said quietly. "It's been a long time since I've enjoyed myself this much." "I should be thanking you," Emma replied, "for everything." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. For a breathless moment, Emma thought he might kiss her, right there in front of the entire town. But then Lily began crying from Widow Jenkins' arms, and the moment passed. The ride home was quiet, but it was a comfortable silence filled with unspoken thoughts and feelings. Lily slept against Emma's chest, exhausted from the excitement and attention. As Zachary helped Emma down from the wagon at the ranch, his hands lingered at her waist just a moment longer than necessary. Their eyes met in the moonlight. "Good night, Emma," he said softly. "Good night, Zachary," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. That night, Emma lay awake long after putting Lily down, replaying every moment of the dance in her mind. She thought of Thomas, feeling a pang of guilt that was quickly replaced by certainty that he would have wanted her to find happiness again. But was she ready? And was Zachary truly interested in being more than just her benefactor? The way he had looked at her tonight suggested he might be, but Emma had learned the hard way that hope could be a dangerous thing. Winter descended on the ranch with sudden ferocity 2 weeks after the harvest dance. A blizzard howled around the cabin, the wind finding every crack and crevice despite Zachary's careful preparations. Emma sat near the fire, knitting a small sweater for Lily, while Zachary mended a harness. The baby slept peacefully in her cradle, oblivious to the storm. "Never seen snow like this in November," Zachary commented, looking up from his work. "Good thing we stocked up at the general store last week." Emma nodded, counting stitches. "Will the cattle be all right? They're in the sheltered canyon with plenty of feed. They're tougher than they look." He paused, watching her work. "You're good at that," Emma smiled. "My mother taught me, said a woman who can knit can always earn her way." "Smart woman, your mother, she was." Emma tied off a row. "She would have liked you." Zachary's eyes warmed. "I hope so." A particularly strong gust rattled the windows, making Emma jump. Zachary stood and added another log to the fire. "No need to worry," he assured her. "This old place has weathered worse storms." As if to contradict him, a crash sounded from outside, followed by the frantic whinnying of horses. Zachary was on his feet in an instant. "Part of the barn roof must have given way. I need to check on the horses." "You can't go out in this," Emma protested, alarmed by the howling wind. "Those horses are my livelihood," Zachary said, already pulling on his heavy coat. "And they're depending on me." Before Emma could argue further, he had grabbed a lantern and was out the door, disappearing into the swirling snow. Minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness. Emma paced the cabin, peering anxiously out the window though she could see nothing but white. 15 minutes passed, then 30. Lily awoke and began to fuss, sensing her mother's distress, just as Emma was contemplating the unthinkable going out into the storm herself to look for him. The door burst open. Zachary staggered in, covered in snow, supporting himself against the doorframe. "Zachary," Emma rushed to him, helping him to a chair by the fire. His skin was alarmingly cold, his lips tinged blue. "What happened?" Roof beam came down, he managed through chattering teeth. "Got the horses out, but my leg." Emma looked down and gasped. His right pant leg was torn and soaked with what appeared to be both snow and blood. "We need to get you warm first," she said, fighting back panic. "Then I'll look at your leg." She helped him out of his wet clothes, averting her eyes as much as propriety demanded while ensuring he was wrapped in warm blankets. She made him drink hot coffee, laced with whiskey from the bottle he kept for medicinal purposes, then turned her attention to his injured leg. The gash ran along his calf, deep but clean. Emma worked quickly, washing the wound with whiskey, which made Zachary hiss in pain despite his stoicism, then stitching it closed with needle and thread she sterilized in the same spirit. "You've done this before," Zachary observed, his color gradually returning. "My father was accident-prone," Emma explained, tying off the last stitch. "Mother made sure I could handle emergencies." "Thank God for that," Zachary murmured. With his wound cleaned and bandaged, Emma helped him to his bed. He was still alarmingly cold, his body occasionally racked with violent shivers. "You need more warmth," she said, concern overriding her usual reserve. Without giving herself time to reconsider, Emma placed Lily in her cradle, then slipped into the bed beside Zachary, pulling the blankets over them both. His eyes widened in surprise. "Emma, don't argue," she said firmly. "Body heat is the fastest way to prevent the chills from getting worse. I'm not having you die of exposure under my watch, Zachary Fletcher." He gave a weak chuckle. "Yes, madam." Emma kept a respectable distance between them, but even so, she could feel the cold radiating from his body gradually being replaced by warmth. Eventually, his shivering subsided, and his breathing became deep and regular. She told herself she should return to her own bed, but exhaustion and the hypnotic sound of the storm lulled her into sleep beside him. Emma woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the realization that her head was resting on Zachary's chest, his arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders. She froze, mortified but also unwilling to move from the comfort of his embrace. Zachary's voice rumbled beneath her ear. "Morning." Emma sat up quickly, smoothing her rumpled hair. "I'm so sorry, I must have fallen asleep." "I'm not complaining," Zachary said, a smile in his voice. He tried to sit up and winced as the movement jarred his injured leg. "Stay still," Emma admonished. "That wound needs time to heal." Zachary sighed but obeyed. "The animals, I'll tend to them," Emma said. "I've been watching you long enough to know what needs doing." Before he could protest, she was up and moving, checking on Lily, who was miraculously still asleep, then bundling up to face the aftermath of the storm. Outside, the world was transformed into a pristine white landscape. The barn had indeed suffered damage, a section of the roof had collapsed under the weight of the snow, but the structure was sound, and the horses were unharmed in the corral where Zachary had moved them. Emma worked methodically through the morning chores, feeding the animals, clearing paths to the necessary buildings, and assessing what repairs would be needed. By the time she returned to the cabin, she was exhausted but satisfied with her efforts. She found Zachary sitting at the table, having managed to get himself dressed and moving despite her instructions. "You should be resting," she scolded, hanging her wet coat by the door. "Couldn't lie there while you did all the work," he replied. "Besides, Lily was fussing, and I thought you might want to feed her when you came in." Emma looked to where Lily sat contentedly in Zachary's lap, playing with a wooden spoon. The sight of them, together the strong, capable cowboy gently entertaining her daughter, made her heart twist with an emotion she wasn't ready to name. Over the next week, they settled into a new routine. Zachary's injury prevented him from doing the more strenuous ranch work, but he insisted on handling what he could from the cabin mending equipment, keeping accounts, planning spring plantings. Emma took on the outdoor chores, growing more confident with each passing day. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, sometimes talking, sometimes silent, but always comfortable in each other's company. Zachary taught Emma to play checkers, and she delighted in beating him regularly. Emma read aloud from one of the few books. Zachary owned a volume of Tennyson's poetry that had belonged to his mother. During these quiet evenings, something shifted between them. The careful distance they had maintained began to dissolve, replaced by a growing ease and unspoken understanding. Zachary's hand would sometimes find Emma's as they sat together. Emma would occasionally rest her head against his shoulder when fatigue overtook her. 2 weeks after the blizzard, Zachary's leg had healed enough for him to move without pain, though Emma still insisted he avoid heavy labor. On a crisp, clear morning, he found her in the barn measuring oats for the horses. "Thought we might ride into town today," he suggested. "Weather's holding and we need supplies." Emma agreed readily, eager for a change of scenery. They bundled Lily up warmly and set out in the wagon, the snow-covered landscape glittering in the winter sunshine. The main street of Redemption was bustling with activity as people took advantage of the clear weather to conduct business. As Zachary helped Emma down from the wagon, Several townspeople called out greetings, their faces friendly and welcoming. In the general store, Mrs. Holbrook beamed at the sight of them. "Emma, my dear, and little Lily too, how you've both thrived out at Zachary's place." While Zachary discussed feed prices with Mr. Holbrook, the shopkeeper drew Emma aside. "You know, folks have been talking," Mrs. Holbrook said in a hushed tone. Emma tensed. "Oh, nothing bad, dear, just wondering when you and Zachary might make things official." Mrs. Holbrook winked. "A woman and child living with an unmarried man. Well, in normal circumstances, tongues would wag something fierce. But everyone knows Zachary Fletcher's a good Christian man. They're just waiting for wedding bells." Heat flooded Emma's cheeks. "It's not, we haven't." She struggled to find words. "He's been kind enough to give us shelter, that's all." Mrs. Holbrook's knowing smile suggested she didn't believe that for a moment. "If you say so, dear. But I've known that boy since he was knee-high to a grasshopper. Never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Emma was spared having to respond by Lily's sudden fussing. As she tended to her daughter, her mind whirled with confusion. Did Zachary truly have feelings for her beyond kindness and friendship? And if he did, what should she do about it? The ride back to the ranch was quieter than usual, both Emma and Zachary lost in their own thoughts. As they crested the final hill, the ranch came into view, peaceful and inviting in the afternoon light. Zachary pulled the wagon to a stop. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Emma nodded. "It is, Emma." Zachary turned to face her, his expression serious. "There's something I need to ask you." Her heart began to pound. "Yes, I know this is sudden and maybe I'm overstepping, but these past months with you and Lily here." He took a deep breath. "The ranch never felt like a real home until you two arrived." Emma felt tears pricking at her eyes. "Zachary, what I'm trying to say badly is that I don't want you to leave, ever." He reached for her hand. "I know you came here with nothing but the clothes on your back and a baby in your arms, and I know I'm just a simple rancher with modest means. But everything I have, everything I am, I'm offering to you." Emma's breath caught in her throat. "Are you asking?" "I'm asking if you'll marry me, Emma Turner," Zachary said, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. "I'm asking if you'll let me be a father to Lily, and maybe someday, God willing, give her brothers and sisters to grow up with on this land." Tears spilled freely down Emma's cheeks now. "You hardly know me." "I know enough," he replied gently. "I know you're strong and brave. I know you're kind and smart. I know you love your daughter fiercely. And I know that every morning I wake up hoping to see your face, and every night I thank God for bringing you to that road where I found you." Emma thought of the months they had spent together, of the easy partnership that had formed between them, of the way her heart lightened whenever Zachary entered a room. She thought of Lily, who had already formed an attachment to this good man who treated her with such tenderness. "Yes," she whispered, then more firmly, "Yes, Zachary Fletcher, I will marry you." The joy that lit his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. When she didn't, his lips met hers in a kiss that was gentle yet full of promise. Emma felt something bloom inside her chest: hope, joy, and a love that had been growing quietly all along. When they finally parted, Zachary rested his forehead against hers. "We'll go to Reverend Hayes tomorrow, if that suits you." Emma nodded, too full of emotion for words. Lily chose that moment to let out a happy squeal, as if giving her blessing to their union. They both laughed, breaking the intensity of the moment. "I think she approves," Zachary said, gently touching the baby's cheek. "She's a good judge of character," Emma replied, her heart overflowing with happiness. The next morning dawned clear and cold. Emma dressed with care in her green calico dress, arranging her hair as best she could without assistance. Lily wore the white gown from the harvest dance, freshly washed and pressed. Zachary knocked softly on the bedroom door. "Ready." Emma opened it to find him standing there in his best clothes, a clean white shirt, dark trousers, and a vest she had never seen before. He had trimmed his beard and slicked back his hair, and the sight of him made her breath catch. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes warm with admiration. "So do you," she replied, meaning it. The ride to town was filled with a nervous excitement. At the church, Reverend Hayes welcomed them warmly, expressing no surprise at their request for an immediate wedding. "Been expecting you two," he said with a knowing smile. "Let me send for a couple of witnesses." Within an hour, Emma found herself standing before the altar, Lily in her arms, exchanging vows with the man who had rescued them from desperation. Mrs. Holbrook and the mayor stood as witnesses, both beaming with approval. "Do you, Zachary Fletcher, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" the Reverend asked. Zachary's eyes never left Emma's as he replied, "I do." "And do you, Emma Turner, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do," Emma said, her voice clear and certain. "Then by the authority vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Reverend Hayes smiled. "You may kiss your bride." Zachary's kiss was gentle but held a promise of passion that made Emma blush. As they turned to face their small audience, Lily reached out to pat Zachary's cheek, bringing laughter from everyone present. "Looks like she's claiming her new pa," Mrs. Holbrook said, wiping away a tear. After accepting congratulations and declining offers of an impromptu celebration in favor of returning to their home, the new family made their way back to the ranch. As they approached the cabin, Zachary suddenly pulled the wagon to a stop. "Wait here," he said, jumping down. Before Emma could question him, he had come around to her side and lifted her and Lily into his arms. "Zachary," Emma laughed, clutching Lily securely. "What are you doing?" "Carrying my wife and daughter across the threshold," he said matter-of-factly, though his eyes danced with happiness. "It's tradition." With surprising ease, he carried them both into the cabin, setting them down gently in the middle of the main room. "Welcome home, Mrs. Fletcher," he said softly. The name sent a thrill through Emma. "I like the sound of that." That evening, after Lily had been fed and put to bed in what was now officially her own room, the former spare room that Zachary had been using, husband and wife shared their first meal together by candlelight. "I have something for you," Zachary said, as they finished eating. He reached into his pocket and produced a simple gold band. "It was my mother's. I've been carrying it since the day I asked you to marry me, hoping you'd say yes." Emma extended her hand, watching with tear-filled eyes as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "It's perfect," she whispered. Later, as they stood together in the bedroom that was now truly theirs to share, Emma felt a moment of shyness. Zachary seemed to sense her nervousness. "We can wait," he said gently. "There's no rush." Emma reached up to touch his face. "No," she said softly. "No more waiting." Their coming together was tender and unhurried, a culmination of months of growing feelings and mutual respect. Afterward, as Emma lay in the circle of Zachary's arms, she felt a sense of rightness, of coming home in a way she had never experienced before. "I love you, Emma Fletcher," Zachary murmured against her hair. "And I love you," she replied, the words coming easily now that she had finally allowed herself to acknowledge the truth of her feelings. Spring came early that year, turning the ranch into a riot of wildflowers and new growth. Emma watched from the porch as Zachary taught 7-month-old Lily to pet a newborn calf, his big hands guiding her tiny ones with infinite patience. The past months had brought changes to the ranch, a new room added to the cabin, preparations for expanded crops, and plans for a larger herd. But the most significant change was within Emma herself. The frightened, desperate woman who had collapsed by the roadside was gone, replaced by someone who faced each day with confidence and joy. As Zachary approached the porch, Lily babbling happily in his arms, Emma felt a flutter in her abdomen, the first movement of the child they had created together, a secret she had been saving to share with him today. "What are you smiling about, Mrs. Fletcher?" Zachary asked, climbing the steps to join her. Emma took his free hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "I was just thinking about how full our lives have become," she said, and how much fuller they're about to get. Zachary's expression shifted from confusion to wonder as understanding dawned. Emma, are you saying? She nodded, her heart full of happiness. Come October, Lily will have a little brother or sister. The joy that spread across Zachary's face was everything Emma had hoped for. He carefully set Lily down on the porch, then pulled Emma into his arms, lifting her off her feet in his excitement. Careful, she laughed. There are now two of us you're swinging around. He set her down gently, his eyes shining with unshed tears. I never thought I could be this happy, he said, his voice rough with emotion. When I found you that day, with your baby crying alone by the road, I had no idea I was finding my whole world. Emma rose on tiptoes to kiss him, remembering the words he had spoken that fateful day. You said you'd be the one to hold us both. And I meant it, Zachary replied, drawing her close. Then, now, and forever. As the sun set over their land, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Emma looked at her husband and daughter soon to be joined by another child, and knew with absolute certainty that she had found not just shelter, but love, belonging, and a future brighter than she had ever dared to dream. 5 years later, Emma Fletcher stood in the doorway of the expanded ranch house, watching as Zachary chased their children across the yard. 6-year-old Lily shrieked with laughter as she dodged her father's grasp, her golden hair streaming behind her like a banner. 4-year-old James and 2-year-old Sarah followed their sister's example, running in erratic patterns that made catching them a genuine challenge. Papa's a monster, Lily called out, her face flushed with excitement. Run faster. Zachary growled playfully, hunching his shoulders and extending his hands like claws. The Fletcher monster is going to get you, he threatened, lunging toward James, who squealed and changed direction. Emma smiled, resting one hand on her swollen belly. 7 months pregnant with their 4th child, she was content to be a spectator to this familiar game. The ranch had prospered over the years. What had once been a modest operation was now one of the most successful in the territory. The original cabin had been expanded into a comfortable 2-story home, and a bunkhouse had been added to accommodate the 3 hands they now employed. The cattle herd had tripled in size, and Zachary's careful breeding program had produced stock that commanded premium prices. But their greatest wealth, Emma knew, was not measured in acres or animals. It was in the love that filled their home, in the children they were raising, in the partnership they had built together. As if sensing her thoughts, Zachary looked up and caught her eye across the yard. Even after 5 years of marriage, that smile still made her heart skip a beat. He whispered something to the children, who immediately turned and ran toward the house, launching themselves at their mother with exuberant hugs. Careful with Mama, Zachary cautioned, following at a more sedate pace. Remember the baby. When is the baby coming out? Sarah asked, patting Emma's stomach with curious hands. Not for a while yet, sweetheart, Emma replied, smoothing her youngest daughter's dark curls. I hope it's another girl, Lily declared. Boys are too noisy. James stuck out his tongue at his sister. Girls are too bossy. That's enough, you two, Zachary said, but his tone held amusement rather than censure. He reached Emma's side and placed a gentle kiss on her forehead. How are you feeling? Perfectly well, Emma assured him, just a bit tired. Your son has been kicking up a storm today. My son, Zachary raised an eyebrow. I seem to recall you were certain James would be a girl too. Emma laughed. Mother's intuition, this one's a boy. The dinner bell rang from inside the house, where Mariah, the young woman who helped Emma with household tasks, was setting the table. Race you to the wash basin. James challenged his sisters, and the children were off again, thundering into the house with the energy only the very young possess. Zachary offered Emma his arm. Shall we, Mrs. Fletcher? Emma slipped her hand into the crook of his elbow. We shall, Mr. Fletcher. As they walked toward the house, Emma's thoughts drifted back to that desperate day on the dusty road. How close she had come to giving up, and how dramatically her life had changed because a kind-hearted cowboy had stopped to help a woman and her crying baby. "What are you thinking about?" Zachary asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "Just how fortunate we are," Emma replied. "How one moment can change everything." Zachary nodded, understanding in his eyes. They had often spoken of that day, marveling at the chain of circumstances that had brought them together. "God's hand," he said simply. After dinner and the familiar chaos of getting 3 energetic children bathed and into bed, Emma and Zachary sat together on the porch swing, a nightly ritual they both cherished. The spring evening was mild, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of wildflowers and new grass. "Letter came from your brother today," Emma mentioned, leaning comfortably against Zachary's side. "Says he and Margaret might visit this summer with the twins." "That'll be nice," Zachary replied, his arm around her shoulders. "Been too long since we've seen them." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Emma felt the baby move within her and placed Zachary's hand where he could feel it too. "Strong little fellow," he murmured, "just like his father." Zachary turned to face her, his expression suddenly serious. "Are you happy, Emma? Truly happy?" The question surprised her. "Of course I am. Why would you ask that?" He shrugged, a hint of vulnerability showing through his usual confidence. "Sometimes I wonder if you ever regret it. Taking a chance on a rough cowboy, settling for this life when you might have had something different." Emma took his face between her hands, making sure he was looking directly into her eyes. "Zachary Fletcher, there has not been a single day in the past 5 years when I have regretted saying yes to you. Not one. This life we've built together is everything I could have hoped for and more than I ever dreamed possible." Relief softened his features. "Even with all the hard work and chaos, especially with all that," Emma said firmly. "It means we're living fully, loving deeply. What more could anyone ask from life?" Zachary leaned forward to kiss her, a kiss that still held all the tenderness and passion of their first. "I love you, Emma Fletcher," he said when they finally parted. "More today than yesterday, less than tomorrow." "And I love you," she replied, resting her head on his shoulder as they resumed their gentle swinging. "My cowboy who stopped on the road." As darkness settled over their land and the chorus of night creatures began their symphony, Emma felt a profound sense of gratitude. From desperation had come deliverance. From a chance encounter had come a lifetime of love. From a baby crying alone by the road had grown a family bound by something stronger than blood, the choice to love, to hold, to build a life together. And as stars appeared one by one in the vast Texas sky, Emma knew that whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them together, the woman, the cowboy, and the children they cherished. Their story, which had begun with a roadside rescue, would continue to unfold with each passing season, each new child, each moment of joy and sorrow shared between them. It was, Emma thought as she drifted into contentment in her husband's arms, the greatest blessing life could offer. And it had all begun because her baby cried alone by the road, and a cowboy with a gentle heart had said, "Then I'll be the one to hold you both."